Ever since he was 6 years old, Marvin had known exactly what he wanted to be: a zookeeper. It started with a trip to the local zoo with his parents, where he spent the entire day pressing his nose against every enclosure, transfixed by the exotic creatures and the uniformed staff who got to be among them every day. From that moment on, it was monkey references at show and tell, tiger drawings taped to the refrigerator, and a bath time ritual of rubber hippos, crocodiles, and his parents wondered whether he might outgrow his obsession once he discovered the joys of pop music or sports. Nope, he just became more determined. When he graduated and managed to land a position at the same zoo he'd idolized since childhood, he thought he had achieved nirvana. On his very first day, Marvin whistled show tunes and recited fun facts about animals to anyone within earshot. But even after a few years on the job, his excitement hadn't worn off. If anything, it had magnified. He believed in giving 110% to everything, from checking on the animals to cleaning their enclosures. He wore zookeeper khakis, so crisply ironed they practically crackled, and he spent tedious hours making sure each enclosure sign was polished so the visitors could see the animals' names with pristine clarity. Marvin's supervisors admired his gusto, though they occasionally worried that his energy would cause some kind of wild mishap. They had no idea just how right they would be. It was a bright Tuesday morning, and Marvin had just hopped off his bicycle by the staff entrance. The forecast called for a calm day with mild temperatures perfect for zoo guests and, theoretically, for the animals. As Marvin made his usual rounds, greeting every nearby flamingo, lion, and chimpanzee with a hearty "Good morning, buddy" in his cheeriest voice, he felt a jolt of extra pep in his step. Why? He had devised an animal enrichment extravaganza, a plan to fill the zoo with new activities, special treats, and surprises for every creature in attendance. In his mind, it would be a day to remember. First on his list was a special puzzle feeder for the monkeys. He hopped over to the primate area, high-fived a coworker, and placed the feeders. The monkeys went bananas, both figuratively and literally, rummaging through the contraptions that promised hidden treats. Marvin nodded in satisfaction. Then on to the giraffes. He'd arranged a unique browse station, filled with fresh leaves, intentionally positioned, so the giraffes would stretch up and engage in a bit of foraging fun. The tall mammals fluttered their long lashes at him as they tested their new green buffet. Success again. This last step was the highlight of his day. A carnival-inspired obstacle course for the elephants, complete with oversized beach balls and bright streamers for them to toss around. Just as Marvin smiled, turning a corner near the back gates, he noticed something peculiar. The main zoo gate's alarm light was blinking. Instantly, he thought, "Oh dear, did someone forget to close the gate behind them when they brought in those new supplies?" He tisk-tisked, hurried to the control panel to reset it, and glanced at the locked door. It seemed secure at first glance, so he concluded the alarm must have malfunctioned. With his buoyant optimism, Marvin shrugged and headed back to the elephants. He didn't notice that a critical switch was left in the disengaged position. The rest of the morning was full of laughter and squeals from both children and adults who marveled at the animals' enthusiastic antics. Marvin was in his element, making sure to answer curious guests who asked questions about each exhibit. "Yes, sir, that is a lesser flamingo. They're shorter, but no less impressive," he'd chirp. Or, "Oh yes, these elephants love when we give them novelty items to play with." The families gratefully nodded. There was something so endearing about Marvin's unbridled eagerness. If only that pesky alarm detail weren't about to unravel everything. When lunchtime rolled around, the zoo's staff typically gathered in the break room to share a quick meal. Marvin's lunch was a medley of items each shaped like an animal: giraffe-shaped crackers, monkey-face cookies, and even a little cup emblazoned with a cartoon zebra. He had just begun exchanging jokes with his coworkers when a faint siren began to wail outside. At first, everyone assumed it was from a passing ambulance or maybe some city construction, but the wail continued and grew louder, swirling in a troubling crescendo. Heads turned, eyes widened. Suddenly, the zoo's intercom crackled to life with a frantic voice from security. Attention all staff, this is not a drill. Multiple animals have been sighted leaving the zoo grounds. Repeat, multiple animals have... The announcement cut out, replaced by static. Pandemonium would be an understatement. Staff members jumped from their chairs, sending lunch items flying. Marvin nearly choked on his giraffe cracker. Wait, what? Marvin burst out of the break room, sprinting toward the security office. On the monitors, he could see a horrifying, yet almost comical scene. Monkeys crossing the street in a little cluster, lions trotting around the parking lot, a kangaroo bounding through the gift store's side exit, and dear goodness, a couple of zebras prancing down the pedestrian walk. Wide-eyed, Marvin turned to the security guard. How did they... No, how could they? This is impossible, he gulped. The guard shook his head. I don't know, but we've got to round them up. We're trying to lock down the gates, but they're, well, wide open. As if to confirm the looming chaos, frantic calls started pouring in from the city. A local radio station was broadcasting updates. Unconfirmed reports indicate a breakout at the Daleview Zoo. Drivers on Maple Avenue, be advised, watch out for animals on the road. Marvin could picture the scene like something out of a cartoon, yet this was all too real. His mind raced. He had been near the control panel earlier, fiddled with the alarm. Something he'd done must have deactivated the security locks. The illusions of a mild, routine day now lay in tatters. With the speed born of pure panic, Marvin grabbed a set of tranquilizer darts and a walkie-talkie. Racing out, he radioed other co-workers, instructing them to fan out, locate each species, and calmly guide them back. We've got this, he said, trying to sound confident. Just stay calm, everyone. Outside the main entrance, he found a scene that would make a comedic montage. Two zebras were trotting along the sidewalk, their stripes contrasting absurdly with the pastel shops that framed the street. A mother with a stroller gawked, phone raised to snap pictures, while the baby in the stroller squealed with delight. A cluster of monkeys had perched themselves atop a bus stop, picking at each other's fur and occasionally screeching at stunned. At the corner, a teen was streaming live on social media, narrating every moment. Yo guys, check it out, zoo animals are literally in the street, this is nuts. Marvin approached the zebras first, speaking in the same calm tone he used in the enclosure. Hey guys, let's not trot away too far, okay? How about we go back? There's a big bale of hay with your name on it. The zebras flicked their ears, but didn't budge. They seemed entranced by their new environment, sniffing a nearby bus bench advertisement like it was some exotic forest trunk. With measured steps, Marvin reached into his pocket for a few crunchy treats. He extended his hand, letting the zebras sniff. Slowly they inched closer. Curiosity piqued. Then, out of nowhere, a fire engine roared down the street, siren blaring. The zebras jumped, spooked, and galloped off. Marvin let out a long, exasperated groan and dashed after them, weaving around startled bystanders. Careful, he yelled at the wrong moment, nearly tripping over a water hydrant himself. He realized this might be a losing battle without more help. He radioed for backup, but his earpiece crackled with half a dozen chaotic voices. Another team found a lion rummaging by the local butcher shop dumpsters. Someone else had spotted a pair of kangaroos bounding across a soccer field, delighting a group of kids who abandoned the ball to chase them. Over by the farmer's market, a couple of helpful staffers tried to lure a small herd of goats back into a truck, only to have the goats scatter and nibble on unsuspecting vendors' produce. Every time Marvin tried to get a handle on one situation, the walkie-talkie squawked with a new one. His heart thumped as he pictured the lions. Of all the animals, the big cats concerned him the most in a city setting, though he knew the sightings were more comedic than truly hazardous, because any lion used to zoo life looked to avoid large crowds. Still, better to round them up fast. Steeling himself, he sprinted a few blocks, guided by frantic glimpses from locals who pointed and squealed. He found two staffers crouched behind a parked sedan, holding nets. Peering over the car's hood, they watched a lion examining piles of trash bags behind a butcher's shop. Marvin swallowed. Okay, he whispered. He's focused on those leftover scraps. We usher him calmly away. He took a tranquilizer dart and loaded it quietly, Then, with quick but careful aim, he fired. The lion jerked up, startled, then let out a thunderous roar. Marvin froze, the staffers behind the sedan ducked, but within moments, the tranquilizer took effect. The lion swayed, eyelids heavy, and soon collapsed into a gentle doze. Relieved, all three of them hurried to secure the big cat. "One down," a staffer said, half laughing in relief, "but plenty to go." Marvin's next stop was downtown Daleview, a bustling center with more foot traffic and tall buildings, not where you want to find a giraffe or an elephant meandering around. As soon as he arrived at the square, he was greeted by squeals and commotion from the crowd. He looked up, ways up, and there, placidly munching on some decorative spring flowers, was a giraffe near a bus shelter. Its long neck drooped languidly as it sampled a potted plant that had been placed to beautify the street corner. Tourists were snapping photos at breakneck speed, some happily petting the giraffe's neck, which the gentle giant didn't seem to mind. Marvin decided on a different tactic this time. Keep calm, speak softly, and gently lead the giraffe. Slipping out of the crowd's center, he found a small bucket of leaves a florist had offered up as a bribe. He tapped the metal bucket to draw the giraffe's attention, and true to general giraffe nature, it ambled along behind him as though he were the Pied Piper of tall mammals. The crowd parted, cameras still rolling, capturing the unusual parade. After a few minutes, Marvin guided the giraffe toward one of the zoo's transport trucks, which, thankfully, had arrived. With the promise of more leaves, the giraffe stepped up and into the vehicle with surprising grace. One more success. Another call crackled through. "Marvin, we've got a group of monkeys in the shopping district near Maple Street. Some have gone into a candy store. It's not good." He dashed off again, half regretting his earlier excitement for an animal enrichment day. The city was the real enrichment for these animals right now, and they were going wild, literally. Near Maple Street, a flock of squawking macaws soared overhead, their colorful feathers shimmering in the afternoon sun. Marvin gazed skyward, momentarily distracted by how majestic they looked. At street level, the monkeys had turned a charming sweet boutique into a jungle gym. Finger-mudge candy displays told the story. They'd sampled half the gummies. One monkey, perched on a shelf, clutched a bright lollipop bigger than its face. Another flung jelly beans at gawking onlookers, and a third was rummaging behind the cashier's counter, presumably hoping to score something tastier than loose change. "All right, you little candy thieves," Marvin muttered. "Let's do this." He signaled an employee from the store who cautiously stepped forward with a net. Usually, net capture was a last resort because it could stress out the animals, but they had made a sugary fortress of the entire establishment. With stealthy steps, Marvin and the employee approached from two angles, cornered the mischievous monkeys, and managed to coax most into crates with the promise of fresh fruit. A few sidled away on the shelves, only to be gently nudged into nets and placed safely in carriers. The store clerk looked at the candy-coated floor in disbelief, and Marvin offered a quick apology, handing over a reimbursement form from the zoo's emergency binder. By mid-afternoon, pockets of the city had turned into mini adventurers. Staffers were herding penguins from a fountain, while others coaxed flamingos away from the reflection in a sliding glass door. A group of helpful volunteers had joined in, forming a line to guide two shy kangaroos from behind a coffee shop. The city's mayor had gone on TV, announcing that the public should remain calm, give the animals space, and let the professionals do their jobs. Despite the fiasco, many residents were surprisingly good-natured about the spectacle. After all, it's not every day you see a rhino rummaging through newspaper racks. To Marvin's relief, most of the big cats were located quickly, tranquilized, and safely taken back to the zoo. The elephants, ironically, had congregated at a vacant lot, cheerfully knocking around giant construction cones like they were toys. The staff set up a makeshift corral with heavy trucks and barricades while carefully urging the elephants onto transport vehicles. By the time evening crept in, the staff had accounted for almost every missing animal, though some smaller ones, like certain reptiles or birds, were still unaccounted for. Marvin refused to rest until every last creature was found. One especially elusive figure was Larry the llama, a crowd favorite known for being exceptionally testy and prone to spitting. Despite how recognizable he was, no one had spotted him. Or at least Marvin thought so, until a call came in. "We just got a report of a llama on the second floor of a department store." Marvin blinked. "A second floor? But escalators?" he stammered. "He must have hopped up them like it was a slope." Marvin arrived to find staff silently creeping through racks of clothes, all the while hearing distinctive humming and spitting noises. Peering between racks of colorful blouses, Marvin spotted Larry, peering back at him with typical llama insolence. The store's mannequins had evidently caught Larry's attention, as he was busy sniffing and occasionally spitting at them. With calm deliberation, Marvin retrieved a piece of apple. "Hey, buddy," he cooed softly. "Let's not ruin the nice clothes, okay?" Larry glared, but after a minute the llama ambled over, enticed by the fruit. Wardrobe crisis averted. Safely guided out with a halter, Larry left behind only a bit of llama drool on a few unfortunate garments. By the time darkness fell fully across the city, nearly every species had been corralled either in trucks or back at the zoo. Marvin stood near the zoo entrance alongside exhausted coworkers and volunteers. Though successful, they were covered in sweat, smudges, and in some cases, droppings or sticky candy residue. They looked, in short, like they had all run a marathon through a dessert factory that also stored farm animals. With heavy sighs and comedic groans, they began sorting out which creature went where. Vets and caretakers checked each animal's condition. Mercifully, none seemed harmed. If anything, they looked rather delighted from their day out on the town. A tumultuous wave of relief and leftover adrenaline washed over Marvin. The fiasco was almost over, and thankfully no one human or animal had been seriously hurt. This was, by all accounts, a miracle, but now came the next step, figuring out how it happened and, more importantly, explaining to management. Marvin swallowed the lump in his throat. He suspected the blame rested largely on him. That suspicion was confirmed when the head of security and the zoo's director confronted him once the animals were safely stowed. "Marvin," said the director, arms crossed but tone calm, "can you walk us through your day, starting from the moment you arrived?" It sounded official. Marvin's ears reddened as he recounted the morning, mentioning the blinking alarm light and how he tried to reset it. At the vital moment in the story, the director's eyebrows shot upward. "So you hit the override switch when you thought it was malfunctioning? Did you then re-engage the locks afterward?" Marvin's heart sunk. I guess I forgot. I was in a hurry, or maybe I didn't notice that it never locked back in." Security sighed sympathetically. The director gave a long, measured look. Marvin tried to speak, but felt his voice crack from exhaustion and guilt. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I got excited about the new enrichment plan. I never meant for this to happen. I promise it'll never happen again." Silence hung in the air. Then the director pinched the bridge of his nose, stifling what might have been either frustration or a slight chuckle. "Marvin, these animals love you, the staff loves you, and your dedication is admirable. But we need a better system in place. We got lucky no one was seriously harmed. We'll need to review protocols, fix that alarm, and probably do a whole separate safety training. You understand?" Marvin nodded fervently, relief washing over him that he wouldn't be immediately fired. The next day, as news crews flocked to the zoo for interviews, Marvin found himself at the center of attention, albeit a self-conscious one. He stood with a microphone thrust at his face. "So, how did you manage to get the elephants back?" asked one reporter. "Was anyone mauled by the lions?" demanded another, in less tactful wording. He answered with a mixture of awkwardness, sincerity, and occasional comedic commentary. He emphasized the outpouring of help from staff, volunteers, and resourceful citizens. He also validated that yes, the situation could have been far worse, but they'd done everything possible to keep it safe. On social media, images and videos of the city's impromptu safari had gone viral. There were clips of the monkeys in the candy store, the giraffe sampling potted flowers, and hammered together footage of a kangaroo bounding around kids playing soccer. A local influencer had even created a comedic montage set to bouncy music featuring various escapes. The last shot was a freeze frame of Marvin chasing two zebras. The caption read, "When your day at the zoo goes off track." He couldn't help but laugh at how absurd it all looked. In the months that followed, the zoo doubled down on new security measures. They installed backups for the alarm system, better signage about gate closures, and a new lock design that required an electronic passcode, ensuring that excited zookeepers couldn't just flick a switch without noticing. Management also mandated staff refresher courses on crisis containment. Marvin practically memorized the 200-page safety manual. And yet, there was a silver lining. In an odd twist, attendance at the zoo soared. People from surrounding towns, lured by the TV coverage, wanted to see the famous escapist animals. Children begged their parents to take them to see the monkeys who had once commandeered a candy store. Merchandising soared, t-shirts emblazoned with comedic slogans sold out, and the zoo's coffers filled with new revenue. The marketing department even produced a limited edition city safari tour map, playfully detailing the animals' route through downtown. Marvin remained in his role, albeit a bit more humble. He still greeted each animal with unbridled joy, still ironed his khakis to a crisp, but he now triple-checked every lock, gate, and latch he came across. Occasionally, he'd catch another staff member's eye and they'd share a little smirk as if to say, "Remember that day we went full Jumanji?" The memories still lingered, but through it all, their camaraderie had grown. There's nothing like a citywide animal chase to bring a team closer together. As for the animals, while they couldn't articulate their grand escapade, they seemed content back in their enclosures. The elephants, upon returning, had trumpeted happily at Marvin, as if to say thanks for the big day out. The monkeys, ironically, had become a bit pickier about their meals, perhaps reminiscing about the sugar rush from the candy store. Giraffes seemed to search for decorative flower pots in their enclosure, hoping for another sample of daisies. And Marvin, on quiet afternoons, sometimes gazed over the city skyline from atop the zoo's highest platform and let out a small chuckle at the memory of seeing zebras on sidewalks and lions near dumpsters. He had learned many lessons that day, the biggest being that just a tiny switch can unravel an entire operation. But he also learned people could come together in extraordinary ways and that sometimes the worst mishap can become something that unites a community. Above all else, he realized that accidents happen even to the most enthusiastic zookeepers, and that what really matters is how you respond, learn, and move forward. So, with new wisdom, renewed determination, and a bit more caution, Marvin continued his life's calling. He was still the zoo's biggest fan, still bursting with animal facts, and still every bit as enthusiastic, just minus the slip of letting them out for a grand tour of the city. Because if nothing else, that fiasco had given him one story he'd be telling at staff dinners and one day to his grandchildren. For years and years to come,